Hello, welcome to Pro Bono, sponsored by Cahoon Legal. I'm your host, Amber Cahoon, an attorney in North Texas. New podcasts are available monthly, and you can subscribe on most podcast platforms and find us on social media. Follow us at Pro Bono Show. Remember, this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to replace professional legal advice. This information is catered towards Texans with a focus on Texas law. What we have coming up for you today on our show is small business by the numbers. We're going to be looking at different things about small business and subscription legal programs and what you might want to do to prepare if you're going to apply for a small business loan. So let's get started. So let's look at the numbers about small business. First off, many of these sources are from a variety of places, so we'll provide links so you can look up this, and there's more statistics that we're not even going to cover, so you can look into those. So first off, there are over 30.7 million small businesses in the United States, and more than 50% of those fail in their first year. Now, I want to talk about this because this is Small Business Month, and I get people who contact me and my law firm, Cahoon Legal, to start a small business. And this is stuff that we talk about. And so I like to prepare my clients for all types of situations. And so being prepared for if a business fails or that you want to get out of it is so important at the beginning when you're starting the business. When everything's good, you're in this honeymoon period if you're working with other people, so that you have a plan to get out or to end the business where you would not end up in litigation, because litigation is going to take years and be tens of thousands of dollars, which actually we have some statistics about that as well. What are the type of people who start small businesses? Well, it's everyone. But right now, women own 12.3 million small businesses. LGBT-owned small businesses represent less than 1% of small businesses. And 36% of Black small business owners opened a small business because they were ready to become their own boss. And 17% were disillusioned by corporate America. 49% of small business loans from banks go to white business owners or white-owned businesses, while only 3% of loans went to Black-owned businesses. Now, I'm saying this not to discourage anyone at all, because opening a small business can be completely rewarding as well as tiring. And there's so many things involved in it, and there are programs to help small business owners no matter your gender or race. And so I don't want this to be discouraging to anyone, because really we need diversity, and we need diversity in our small businesses and the clients and the backgrounds that they have, because we have a wide variety of customers waiting that need your business. And so don't let these numbers discourage you at all. But it's something to realize the reality of the situation so that you can make plans to overcome it. Also, I'll tell you a little bit more, this section, decline of the small business. During COVID, there was a big decline, obviously. I'm sure you guys know this, but companies that experience profit declines of up to 87% were forced to close during the pandemic. A number of small businesses fell 52%, while their payroll expenses dropped 54% in the months of April, May, June of 2020. So many people were forced to close in the pandemic, and many people faced dramatic declines. And so if that was you and you still have your small business and you survived that, that's, commendable, because it was a very difficult year and the years after, and we're still feeling some effects of that. It says over the past 30 years, new business creation has declined by almost 50%. And then it says more than 40% of 25 to 34-year-old Americans say they have a fear of failure, and that has kept them from starting a new company. Now, I will say that I have many business clients, and what I have found is that there are different type of people, like obviously in every situation, but we have people who are very prepared that call me and they have done a lot of research beforehand, and they have very thorough questions about what they need to do to be successful. And then we have some people who call me after they've already started, and then they're like, I'm kind of hit some stumbling blocks. So I know that there are different type of people. I probably am a little more on I started the business, kind of. I looked into it a little bit beforehand, but then after I started it, I actually looked into it a lot. I had been in a small business for many years, helping owners running their business. So I had experience in doing that, as well as my legal education. But no matter what type you are, you will need legal help. I always tell my business owners, you need to make sure you have the 3 pillars to help you have a good foundation, which is legal help, tax help, and insurance. Those are the basis to really make sure that you're covered and protected. And so what are things that business owners are facing as challenges right now? Small business owners, 23% of them are listing lack of capital or cash flow as their number one challenge. So when you think of cash flow, if you start to have employees, that is usually one of your largest expenses. And so I always say, which I'm quoting other people, is hire slow, fire fast. Not fast in that you skip over legalities, but if you have a problem employee, you need to address it quickly because it can really impact productivity, your bottom line. Whereas hiring slow, making sure you're getting a really good employee, a good candidate for the role, is so important because that's going to be making up a big part of your expenses. In 2024, which are these stats are coming from, over 98% of small businesses employ fewer than 100 employees. 89% employ fewer than 20 employees. Another thing to consider about why small businesses fail, 50% fail within the first 12 months. 42 fail because they lack demand in the market for their product. 2/3 of small businesses, 66%, struggle financially. And across the U.S., on average, 543,000 new businesses are opening every month. And then 25 to 45% of the businesses are no longer able to stay open after a significant financial crisis. And only 25% of small businesses survive 15 years or more. So those are a lot of statistics. And ultimately, why I want to share this, like I've said before, is that you need to prepare. So finances are a big issue. Obviously, you need to have capital. But what kind of capital do you need to start a small business? It really depends. I think I've shared, I started with really no money. I had a friend that needed a divorce, and I talked with her, and we settled on a fee. She paid me that fee, and I used that money. And it was a small amount to start my business. But before that, I didn't have any money or capital set aside. I had, been getting calls from the State Bar of Texas. People were finding me, and I just decided, I've done this before. I've wanted to have my own business. I don't like working the hours that I was working, because I was working with the Small Business Administration at the time and working 6 days a week, over 80 hours a week. And with driving and everything from my home, it was kind of miserable. It was important work that I did during the hurricanes back in 2017, 2018 time when I started. but I really wanted to take control of who I helped and helping people in the way that fit best with my personality, my skill set. And it's important. I think starting your own business is such an awesome thing, but you have to make sure you have a market. That's the big thing, is that are there people? Where's the need? And there are tools to research it. There are tools to look into it. I talked to a lot of people, and they're like, I started this business, and I asked them if they are subscribed to maybe a journal in that area, or if they're industry magazines or news that they've looked into, and a lot of times they haven't. And so there are so many resources out there that are free, that are there to really give you the background so that you understand what you're going to be facing as a small business owner. And just relying on friends and family to spread the word about your business, it's not going to keep you afloat. You really need to get out there and network. You need to put yourself out there. You need to market. And that doesn't mean spending money as far as like advertising. In the 7 years that I've been in practice, I use very, very, very little advertising. Actually, until recently, I've started because I'm doing different things. And so I'm putting more advertising out there. But before now, I haven't. And I've been successful. I've had a good business for these 7 years because I've kept really lean. And that is what is really important, is that you're watching your numbers. I recommend, and I've recommended in the past, Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. You can Google that. It's on Amazon. He has other books as well that are good, but Profit First, I highly recommend. And remember, talk to an accountant, talk to a tax professional so you understand the impact, and they can help you forecast according to the market information that you have about your costs, so that you're making sure that you're pricing yourself accordingly, and to cover the costs that you have. And like I said, start small. That's a big thing with Profit First. They talk about how lean you are at the very beginning and how quickly expenses can get out of control for a business. And it's like, well, I need that after a year, when really, did you? Because before you didn't. So it's really easy to justify having high expenses when that can really crush your business. Another thing to consider is loans. And like I said, some of the statistics about loans are not encouraging, but the U.S. Small Business Administration has loan programs that usually have very good interest rates, which we're going to talk a little bit about preparing for applying for one of those loans. And I would be slow to use capital unless necessary. I find that franchises, if that's the first business you do, they're not a guarantee of success. There's a lot of fees involved, and they're really hard to get out of, and you end up with a lot of debt because they cost so much. And I'm not saying that they fail all the time, but unless it's a really well-known brand and you have the money to go in on one of those, you're really going to struggle. And I don't have the statistics about how often franchises fail, but from my experience, it's pretty high. And unfortunately, like I said, the costs to get in are so big that the failure is really big. And so I recommend starting small. If you're going to learn about business, do it in a smaller way so that you are more prepared when and if you grow. Or if it doesn't work out, then you haven't sunk and kind of like put all of these eggs in one basket. And don't be so quick to quit your full-time job. Really, you need to be able to sustain your salary as well as your growth. And you need to have a reserve, I say, because I'm pretty conservative and not risk adverse, but I really like to have a cushion. I would say 3 to 6 months of capital expenses saved so that you can weather the storms, because every business has cyclical changes as far as profit and when they have slow months and when they have good months, and you're churn and burning, but then there's months where it's crickets. You need to be able to weather those storms, and without a reserve of capital, you won't be able to. And so Profit First will help you put away some of that money if you follow those principles, but that's something to really consider. When I first started, I fortunately, because I had worked so much with the SBA, we had over 6 months of reserve so that I did not have to take a salary. And I know that's unique, and I'm very fortunate. I'm married. My husband had a good job. And although we didn't save for the business, he had been saving. He's a really good saver. And so that gave me freedom to not have the big worry and concern about how I'm going to pay my own salary. And that's a big thing. And so if you have the ability to work this business as a side hustle for a period of time where you can sock away money for your own salary, because that's a big part. You obviously will have expenses in the business, but you can keep those pretty low. You have to be able to, pay for your own living expenses. And if you can try to hold off of those expenses not being taken up by the business, not having the business be responsible for that, you have a much greater period of time to kind of grow and, get a good customer base for the business before it takes on the big, a big expense of a salary. Okay, another part of small businesses that is not encouraging, but something that's really important to know, because many of my small business owners didn't think this would happen until it does, and that's being sued. So it says 36 to 53% of small businesses are sued every year. 43% are threatened with a lawsuit every year. 45% of small businesses are currently involved in litigation. 45% are currently involved in litigation. That's a little less than half. And over 12 million contract lawsuits are filed every year against a small business. Now, this is where it gets really scary, that the average liability of a lawsuit will cost a business $54,000. That could be attorney fees as well as any damages. And in Texas, usually the judges do not award attorney fees. Some statutes require that if they are part of the lawsuit and they're violated, that you can get attorney fees. But in general, the U.S. system and in Texas, judges say that each party needs to bear the cost of their litigation. And unfortunately, even if you shouldn't be sued, if they don't have a case, that does not prevent you from being sued. I've had many clients win from being sued, and they're sued by someone that can't afford to pay their legal fees. And so they have to bear the brunt of it. Even though we won, the other party doesn't have the money. And ultimately, a lawsuit, if you win, it gives you a piece of paper that says that you have a judgment. But you actually have to have another lawsuit, which is called a post-judgment lawsuit, to actually get that money. Unless it's with insurance, it's not always easy to get the money that you're owed from a lawsuit. So consider that when you're thinking about that you want to sue someone. It's really important to make sure that you understand maybe contracts that you're getting into or relationships that you're entering an agreement about beforehand, so you can avoid litigation at the beginning. It says 75% of small business owners are concerned that they'll be targeted for a lawsuit. And on average, a small business owner or business earning $1 million a year would typically have $20,000 in litigation fees a year. And that is pretty consistent with the litigation that I've done in the past. It was about $20,000, $25,000 every year in legal fees. And as I said, lawsuits take years. I filed quite a few in 2019, and they pretty much finished up last year, most of them. So it is not a quick process at all, and it can be very expensive. Now, what makes people successful in business? Now, it's not a guarantee, but an entrepreneur with a business plan have a 260% more likely chance to actually launch, to get off the ground. And a business plan increases the chances of your growth by 30%. Approximately 70% of businesses that survive 5 years have followed a strategic business plan. 71% of fast-growing businesses have plans. And a study found that only 35% of business owners who were surveyed had actually finished a business plan. And simply put, finishing a business plan means that you are twice as likely to succeed. And so next, we're going to talk about subscription legal services. And this is a way to control legal costs. When you first start out, if you've formed your business or you need help forming the businesses, I know I'm an attorney, I have a law firm, I do this all the time. It's expensive. I don't think I'm any more expensive than most other attorneys that are doing this for clients, but on the whole, it's very costly. If it's flat fee or hourly, you're looking at anywhere from $200 to $400 an hour for legal fees. And it takes hours. Many people don't understand how long we have to research, we have to draft. It does take hours to do things, and many people balk. I think they don't time themselves when they're doing things, and so they don't recognize. I remember when I did my business plan, I spent over 10 hours working on it, and it was something that I had a really good template. I had a lot of the resources in front of me, but it takes time to do these things, and it's important to actually set aside that time. So a legal subscription service allows customers or clients to pay a flat fee that's arranged every month, and it provides certain services that are included in that flat fee. A lot of times it's calls or meetings. You may be reviewing contracts. I'm actually launching a monthly subscription service, and the biggest thing that I have is a huge library of documents, templates that you can use in your small business. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't need an attorney, but there are quite a few documents on the internet that people just grab, and they're not always the best, and they don't maybe particularly have Texas law in them. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm offering that, as well as calls, because so often people wait until the problem gets out of control to actually talk to a lawyer. And I have strategy meetings. So strategy about your business, strategy about real estate, strategy about contracts, about estate planning. Because as a business owner, your business that you have, you can, if you incorporate, you can leave that to your family, that legacy that so many people want to have. And you have strategy about employment law issues. So these are things to consider when you're choosing and looking for a legal subscription service. But it's important to look into those, even when you're first starting out, to control costs so that you can plan accordingly and make good legal decisions at the beginning so that you're not facing that high litigation cost because you've made some mistakes. And like I said before, plan to fail and what that looks like when you fail. How are you going to get out of it? Many of my successful business owners have actually, the business that they're in now that they're successful, this is their second or third business. So they've learned some mistakes along the way. And so it's important to really start small so that if you do fail, it's not detrimental for your livelihood or for your family. So as I said, I'll be launching a monthly subscription legal service. I will have 2 options that are lower fee for individuals and very small or for starting out businesses. And then I'll have 3 tiers of more business ended, monthly subscriptions. They all will include access to downloadable legal forms, access to video and article content. And this is in all my practice areas. So my practice areas of business, real estate, contracts, employment law, probate, and estate planning. We have a plethora of articles and video content, as well as the templates for all of those areas. And so it will be a really good resource. And there'll be either discounts on phone consultations, Zoom consultations, or depending on the plan, you might have one included on a quarterly or monthly basis. And you also will get, depending on the plan, responses to email questions. So you can email in your specific questions on a either quarterly, monthly, bi-weekly, or weekly basis, and you'll get those answered. And then there's other, like I said, you have the strategy meetings, and then at some of the plans, you'll have discounts on my hourly and flat fee rates. So those are some of the things that I offer. The first month, you'll have a free trial period, but it'll be anything from $10 a month all the way up to $500 a month. And so I have those 5 different levels, which we'll be showcasing in the coming days, might be months. There's a lot of aspects we've got to get panned out. But if you're looking at that, if you have a small business or if you're an individual that has some legal issues and needs, it's important to evaluate that, because that could be an option for you, that you can get consistent legal help without the high cost of maybe an hourly rate. Okay, so now let's say that you are interested in looking at getting an SBA loan, or probably any type of business loan. But I have a list of the things that most of the banks will be requiring you to provide to them to even get started to look at an SBA loan. And it might be daunting, but one of the first things is you'll need a copy of 3 years of operating projections for the company, which would include your revenue, your expenses, and your projected net operating income. And then your most current 3 years tax returns for the entity. So if you already have been in business, and then the latest, like if it's 24, your latest year-to-date numbers, which would include a balance sheet, profit and loss statement, cash flow, aging summaries that you'll provide to them. And then as the business owner, they want your personal tax returns. If you have 20% or more ownership in the entity, you'll have to provide all of your tax returns. And then also, banks will usually have their own kind of document that you'll fill out about cash flow and about your expenses personally, if you're, again, owning about 20% of the business or not, or more. And then, as I said, your personal financial statement, you're going to have to tell them all about where your money's coming from. If you have real estate, if you have liabilities against you, what that looks like. And then a business plan or operational plan. The SBA actually has some templates on their website that you can use, but there's a lot of other ones. There's also a really good organization that's free that's called SCORE, SCORE, that you can look in for small business. They have a lot of good free resources, mentors to help you draft a business plan. I would not recommend using an attorney to draft a business plan, because that's not usually our specialty, and it would be very costly. And then a lot of times your resume, what is your experience that you'll be providing? And then background in the business. Why are you wanting to do this business? Some of that's included in the business plan, but it's a little more forecasting in a business plan. And so this is the background of the business. If you've been in business, what kind of has gone on to the point where now you're needing capital. Okay, so next I want to do a fact or fiction. This actually comes from a recent experience of one of my clients. If you have a business outside of the state of Texas and you maybe own property in Texas and you advertise all over the country about your property, do you have to form an entity in Texas to do business? The answer is yes. Now, that's kind of a simplistic. There's an evaluation that you really should have done on your business to make sure that you are following the laws. But in Texas, we have very strict rules about if you have to form a business in Texas. Now, you can have formed the business in another state and then actually have a foreign entity in Texas, which means that your business is formed in XYZ state, and then you have it also in Texas, that same business. It's a little higher cost. It's $750 to register instead of the normal $300 when you're incorporating for a business. But if you fail to form that entity and you've been doing business in Texas for years, it asks you that question. It asks you when you started doing it, and you do not want to lie on that form. You want to be honest. And so if you've been doing it for years, you will actually be assessed $750 just to form that entity for every year that you should have formed beforehand. That could be thousands of dollars and really be an unexpected cost, as well as if depending on your revenue for your business, the comptroller, which does our franchise tax, the business tax in this state, you may face a penalty with them. So this is something I've talked to many people who have businesses in other states, and this is just for Texas, but actually if you do business in any state or advertise for business in their states, most likely you need to register. And if you're not sure about it, talk to a lawyer in that state. It's really important. That's actually the biggest news about that was years ago, Amazon. If any of you guys are old enough to remember buying from Amazon, you didn't have to pay tax a lot of times unless you were like in California, because that's where they had warehouses. Well, they were sued by a whole bunch of states, including the state of Texas, and they were assessed basically penalties and back taxes for years of revenue that they got selling to Texans. And so that idea that even if you don't have a physical presence in the state, if you are marketing and advertising and selling to Texans, the state of Texas wants their money. So it's really important that you talk to a lawyer and make sure that you are not in violation of that and could face a penalty at a later date. I want to mention a software that we use and have recommended clients to use called Adobe Scan. It's actually an app that you can put on your phone, and many of my clients that maybe are individuals or have businesses but don't have a scanner or a good scanner, that is a great app that you can use to scan individual documents. Oftentimes for me, I'm a virtual firm, I need your documents scanned to me, and taking a picture of them, cutting off the edges, those aren't good scans. So I recommend getting Adobe Scan on your phone, and the program does excellent work to get a great scan, and so you can send it to whoever you need, including a lawyer. Okay, this is one of the longer episodes, so I'm going to be really quick about kind of something that I've watched personally, which is, I think it's called the Boy Band documentary, and it is about a manager that started with, I think, NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. Can't remember the bands, but a boy band, and he took advantage of them. And the reason I say this is because it is a good learning lesson for all people getting into business, not just entertainment. That's a huge area of law and a huge area that there's a lot of people taking advantage of young talent. But in particular, when you're starting a business, if you are getting into business with someone, you need to know who that person is. And so you're not taken advantage of. And so that's one of the big things I talk to my business owners about. If they're starting a business with someone else, they could have been your best friend for 30 years. Starting a business with someone is very different. Just like marriage. You've been dating, everything's great, and then you get married and you have some obstacles. You have some things that you didn't know about your spouse. Or the same thing with your business partner. And so those are things that you can think through and talk about beforehand so you don't face a legal issue in the background. So I know that's not super personal, but it just always makes me think about how often people get into business with others that they don't really know, and it ends up blowing up in their face. And I don't want that to happen to you. That's all for Pro Bono. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned more about legal topics that can help you in your daily life. Please share with friends and family and send any questions you have that you want me to cover in future episodes. Next month, we're talking about estate planning. Have a great day.